It has finally happened. After years of scandal, drama, and public outrage, the United Kingdom's Parliament has officially taken action against Prince Harry. But what does this really mean? For decades, Harry's life has been a whirlwind of privilege, rebellion, and controversy. From his early days as the mischievous royal under the watchful eye of the public to his more recent moves that shocked the monarchy and the world, Harry has never been just a prince. He has been a symbol. Sometimes loved, often criticized, and always in the spotlight. And now, the unthinkable. Parliament has signed a petition demanding that Harry be stripped of his royal rights. The question on everyone's lips is simple but terrifying. Could this be the beginning of the end for one of Britain's most famous princes? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine this. Millions of citizens, driven by years of frustration and a growing sense of betrayal, came together online to demand that action be taken. A petition that started quietly, almost as a whisper among royal critics, exploded into a nationwide conversation. Headlines screamed. Social media lit up. Celebrities and public figures weighed in. And finally, after months of pressure, Parliament responded. But the story doesn't stop there. Because while the world sees the official announcement, the palace has its own secrets, backroom meetings, confidential documents, and decisions that could redefine the monarchy itself. What happens when public outrage collides with royal privilege? The answer is more shocking than most people realize. To understand the weight of this moment, we need to step back. Prince Harry was never meant to be at the center of this storm. As the younger son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, he was always the spare, the secondary heir in a family obsessed with tradition and legacy. But Harry's life has never been ordinary. From his rebellious youth to his military service, from his tabloid battles to his explosive interviews, Harry has been a figure who refuses to be ignored. And then came Meghan Markle, a woman who, willingly or not, became the catalyst for a series of events that shook the royal family to its core. Together, they challenged centuries of tradition, broke rules that had governed the monarchy for generations, and captivated the world's attention. Their every move was dissected, criticized, and celebrated in equal measure. And now, after everything, Harry faces a reckoning unlike anything he has ever encountered. The petition, simple in its wording but powerful in its implications, demanded that Harry be stripped of all royal rights. For many, this was the ultimate act of accountability. For others, it was a shocking attack on tradition. But why now? Why did it take so long for Parliament to act? The timing is critical. Public sentiment has shifted. Social media campaigns have intensified. Political pressure has reached an unprecedented peak. And in the palace, whispers of concern, anger, and fear have grown louder with each passing day. The convergence of public outrage, political action, and royal intrigue has created a perfect storm, and Harry is at its center. You might be wondering, what exactly does stripping royal rights entail? It's not just a symbolic gesture. It has profound legal, financial, and social implications. We are talking about the removal of titles, the potential loss of inheritance privileges, and the erasure of official duties and responsibilities within the royal family. For a man who has lived his entire life surrounded by privilege and protocol, the consequences are staggering. And yet, Harry's story is not just about legality. It's about human emotion, public perception, and the fragile nature of legacy. The monarchy is not just an institution. It is a symbol, and symbols are fragile when challenged by scandal, betrayal, and modern scrutiny. But let's not forget the personal dimension. Harry is, above all, a man in crisis. The years of public scrutiny, the constant media attacks, the relentless pressure to conform to royal expectations. These are not abstract problems. They are real, they are intimate, and they are draining. Harry's relationships with his family have been strained to breaking points. Trust has been broken in both directions. And now, the public and Parliament have placed the ultimate question before him. Will he maintain his place in a system he has challenged, or will he be permanently severed from the life he was born into? The stakes could not be higher, and the outcome remains uncertain. The reactions to the Parliament's decision have been explosive. Across the United Kingdom, citizens have debated, argued, and protested. Internationally, Media outlets are scrambling to report the fallout. Celebrity commentary has flooded social media platforms. And yet, even with all this attention, the most critical elements remain hidden behind closed doors. The palace has long been a place of secrecy, a fortress of whispered conversations and confidential documents. What is happening within its walls right now is as important as what the public sees, and it may well redefine how we understand the monarchy itself. To truly grasp the gravity of this situation, one must consider the history of royal petitions, the power of parliament, and the delicate balance between tradition and public will. The United Kingdom has a long and complex relationship with its monarchy. The crown is not merely a symbol of authority. It is an institution intertwined with national identity, politics, and history. Decisions about royal privileges are never taken lightly. For Parliament to step in and act against a member of the royal family, particularly a prince, is unprecedented in modern times. And yet, that is exactly what has occurred. It is a moment that will be remembered, debated, and analyzed for years to come. And yet, despite all the legal formalities, public statements, and media coverage, the human story remains central. Prince Harry is not merely a figurehead. He is a person grappling with enormous pressure, conflicting loyalties, and a world that watches his every move. His journey from beloved royal to controversial public figure is a narrative of privilege, rebellion, love, and consequence. The Parliament's decision does not occur in a vacuum. It intersects with every choice he has made, every alliance he has formed, and every secret that has been revealed or concealed. This is more than a legal or political drama. It is a deeply personal story played out on a global stage. Now, you might be asking yourself, what happens next? How will Harry respond? How will Meghan react? What will the rest of the royal family do? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of the monarchy itself? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the very questions that have gripped the nation, fueled debates in living rooms and online forums, and created an atmosphere of suspense and anticipation that has never been seen before. And while the answers are not yet clear, one thing is certain. The events set in motion by this petition will reverberate far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. But there is more. Beyond the headlines and official statements, there are details that the public has not yet seen. Leaks, confidential communications, and insider accounts paint a picture far more complex and far more shocking than most people realize. Documents that have surfaced hint at decisions, reactions, and consequences that could completely alter Harry's place in the royal hierarchy. These revelations are not just sensational, they are transformative. And as we explore the story in depth, the true scale of this crisis will become undeniable. What seems like a singular event is, in reality, the culmination of years of tension, conflict, and missteps, each feeding into the next with escalating consequences. So, as we begin this journey into the shocking events surrounding Prince Harry, the Parliament petition, and the potential stripping of royal rights, we must ask ourselves, what does it really mean to be a royal in modern Britain? How does public perception shape destiny? And how much power does the monarchy truly hold when confronted by public will, legal action, and historical scrutiny? The answers are both fascinating and unsettling. They reveal not only the vulnerability of a man born into privilege, but also the fragility of an institution that has long claimed to be untouchable. In the coming chapters, we will unravel every twist, turn, and secret surrounding this unprecedented moment. From the initial spark of public outrage to the secret meetings within the palace, from the intense debates in Parliament to the financial, emotional, and legal fallout, every piece of the puzzle will be laid bare. You will discover the hidden layers of intrigue, the personal stakes for Harry, and the far-reaching consequences for the monarchy and the nation. And just when you think you understand the story, new revelations will emerge, challenging everything you thought you knew. So stay with us. The story of Prince Harry and the Parliament petition is far from over. Every chapter, every revelation, and every hidden detail matters. And as we peel back the layers, you will begin to see the full scale of what is at stake, not just for Harry, but for the entire royal family and the very idea of monarchy in the 21st century. It started as a whisper, a small online petition, barely noticed at first, quietly circulating on a website that allows citizens to voice their concerns. But whispers have a way of turning into roars when the topic is Prince Harry and when the nation has had enough. The petition called for Harry to be stripped of all his royal rights. On its surface, it seemed almost symbolic, an expression of frustration. But behind it lay something much more potent. A collective sense that a line had been crossed, that privilege and royalty could no longer shield someone from accountability. Within days, what began as a minor online protest exploded into a national conversation. Social media lit up. Hashtags trended. News outlets scrambled to cover the growing movement. Ordinary citizens, frustrated with the royal narrative, shared their own experiences, their own grievances, and their own interpretations of what Harry's actions meant for the monarchy and for the UK itself. There was anger, yes, but there was also fascination. Why did the royal family tolerate scandal for so long? Why did Parliament allow Harry to challenge tradition without consequence? And most importantly, what did this petition mean for the future? As the numbers grew, so did the pressure. Millions signed the petition, not just ordinary citizens, but academics, historians, and even former politicians who understood the legal weight of stripping a royal of his rights. Parliament began to take notice, reluctantly at first, dismissing it as a populist outburst. But populist outbursts have a way of becoming movements when they capture the public imagination, and this one had momentum. The media called it a tidal wave of discontent, the most significant pushback against a royal in decades. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere shifted. Staffers and advisors whispered in corridors, papers shuffled in private offices, and the corridors themselves seemed to vibrate with tension. This was not just another media story to be managed. This was the moment the monarchy feared, a direct challenge to its authority, fueled not by external enemies, but by its own people. For years, Harry had been a thorn in the side of the royal family, rebellious, outspoken, defiant. But now, the people themselves were drawing a line. What made the petition so explosive was not just its demand, but its timing. Harry had already made headlines for a string of controversies, interviews, books, public statements that contradicted royal protocol. Every time he spoke or acted, the media coverage intensified. But this petition was different. It wasn't about gossip or scandal. It was about accountability. Millions of citizens were asking Parliament to take a formal, legal step against a prince of the realm. This was unprecedented. No one in modern history had seen such a coordinated effort to challenge a royal's rights in this way. The petition's language was simple, almost brutally direct. Prince Harry has repeatedly violated the trust of the royal family and the British people. He must be stripped of all royal rights, including titles, privileges, and access to funds. The clarity of the message was part of its power. There was no room for misinterpretation, no ambiguity. It left Parliament with a stark choice: act or ignore a national demand that could not easily be dismissed. Public reaction was immediate. Citizens debated passionately, both online and offline. Television programs ran live discussions, opinion polls surged, and politicians found themselves cornered into responding. Some defended Harry, framing him as a victim of media persecution and royal rigidity. Others argued that no one, not even a prince, was above accountability. And amidst it all, the numbers continued to climb, signatures pouring in from every corner of the UK and even from abroad. The message was unmistakable. The public wanted action, and they wanted it now. As the petition grew, it became clear that it was more than a social statement. It was a catalyst. Journalists began digging into Harry's finances, his military records, his personal actions. Leaks from inside the palace added fuel to the fire, revealing just how closely the monarchy was monitoring the situation. Advisors worried about public perception, the risk of protests, and the potential for long-term damage to the institution. Each day brought new tension, each headline more dramatic than the last. Harry, meanwhile, remained largely silent in public, a decision that only intensified speculation. Yet the petition's success was not inevitable. In its early days, many dismissed it as just another fleeting online protest. But the combination of timing, public frustration, and media amplification created an unstoppable force. The story spread like wildfire, from Twitter to newspapers to television broadcasts. Even celebrities weighed in, some in support of Harry, others calling for action. Every mention added legitimacy, turning what might have been a footnote into a defining moment in royal history. Behind the scenes, the palace began to react. Meetings were convened. Legal advisors reviewed the petition and its implications. Security briefings were issued. The royal family's communication teams scrambled to manage messaging. For the first time in years, it felt as though the institution itself was on the defensive, responding not to media narratives, but to the direct will of the people. This shift in power dynamics was significant. The monarchy had always operated with a degree of autonomy, with Parliament rarely intervening in matters of individual royal conduct. Now, that autonomy was under threat. What made this petition particularly dangerous to Harry was the way it framed the issue as a matter of principle rather than personality. It wasn't about gossip, rumors, or even public dislike. It was about trust, integrity, and adherence to the duties expected of a royal. For a prince who had publicly challenged royal norms, this was the ultimate test. Would the public and Parliament forgive deviations from tradition? Or was Harry's behavior finally crossing the line from controversy into crisis? The media coverage intensified the drama. Headlines screamed accusations and speculation. Editorials debated the consequences. Late-night commentators speculated on what stripping a royal of rights would look like, exploring historical precedents and potential legal battles. Social media became a war zone of opinions, memes, and viral moments, each adding pressure on Parliament to act decisively. Ordinary citizens felt empowered, their voices amplified in a way that had never happened before. The petition had transformed from a document into a movement that demanded accountability at the highest level of the British monarchy. Inside the palace, reactions were mixed. Some advisors saw the petition as a minor annoyance, a temporary outburst that would fade with time. Others understood the gravity, realizing that ignoring it could have long-term consequences for the monarchy's legitimacy. Staffers whispered of emergency meetings and back-channel communications. Royal aides worked tirelessly to manage both public perception and internal panic. The tension was palpable. For the first time, the monarchy seemed vulnerable, and Harry's personal choices were at the center of the storm. By the time Parliament began formally considering the petition, it was impossible to ignore. The numbers were staggering, the media coverage relentless, and the public opinion unmistakable. Political leaders were forced to acknowledge the petition's significance, weighing the potential backlash of inaction against the consequences of targeting a member of the royal family. Every speech, every vote, every public statement was scrutinized. The pressure was immense, and the outcome was far from certain. For Harry, the petition was both a symptom and a signal. It represented years of tension, missteps, and public dissatisfaction. It revealed the fragility of his position, the limits of his influence, and the consequences of defying both tradition and expectation. And while he may have believed that his privilege would protect him, the growing movement against him suggested otherwise. The petition was not just words on a page. It was a test of power, legitimacy, and survival. As the story continued to unfold, one thing became clear. The petition had shaken more than just Harry. It had shaken the monarchy, the media, and the nation itself. It had sparked debates about accountability, privilege, and the responsibilities of those born into power. And it had set the stage for events that would escalate beyond anyone's expectations. But just as it seemed the petition had run its course, a twist emerged. A confidential communication from inside the palace hinted at actions being considered to respond to the public demand. Legal advisors were drafting plans, and discussions were underway about what stripping Harry of his rights could actually entail. The public, meanwhile, waited with bated breath, unaware of the storm building behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace. The petition that started as a simple call to action had become a historic moment. It represented the voice of the people, a challenge to centuries of tradition, and a turning point in Harry's story. And as the world watched, the question remained, would Parliament act, and if so, how dramatically? What came next would not just affect Harry, it could redefine the monarchy itself. While the world erupted over the petition, while social media caught fire and Parliament braced for the political storm of the year, Prince Harry himself seemed to vanish. No public statements. No interviews. No surprise appearances. No sources close to the Sussexes offering cryptic commentary to the tabloids. Nothing. And that silence did something unexpected. It made everyone even more suspicious. Because Harry was never silent. Not anymore. So what was happening behind the scenes? The truth, as it would soon leak, was that Harry was far from idle. In fact, while the public argued over whether he deserved to lose royal rights, he was locked in a series of secret meetings. Quiet, carefully arranged, completely off the books, meetings that would reveal just how high the stakes really were. But the first question is this. Why would a prince who built an entire new identity around speaking openly suddenly go silent? That question alone sent journalists digging. And what they uncovered was the start of the chapter you're about to hear. Because the silence wasn't accidental. It was strategy. But strategy for what? That's where this story truly begins. The first report came from a staff member in Westminster. Someone who had worked there long enough to know when something unusual was unfolding. According to them, Harry had been quietly escorted through a private Parliament entrance at dawn. No press, no photographers, not even the usual palace briefings. Just Harry, appearing suddenly out of nowhere, heading toward a meeting room used only for high-level crisis discussions. The staffer didn't know who he met. Not at first, but they knew one thing. Whatever was happening wasn't normal. Harry wasn't a working royal. He had no political role. He had no official business in Parliament. And yet, there he was, back in the building he publicly distanced himself from years ago. What was he doing there? And why at dawn? Hours later, public speculation exploded. A reporter from a mid-tier political outlet claimed they had seen two senior advisors from the Foreign Affairs Committee entering the same wing minutes after Harry. These weren't advisors typically involved in royal matters. They handled international controversies, geopolitical tension, foreign influence, and national reputation. Harry's presence suddenly looked less like a family issue and more like a national one. Yet it was the next part, the part no one expected, that truly set the tone for the weeks ahead. Because when that dawn meeting ended, Harry didn't go home. He didn't fly back to Montecito. He didn't even go to a hotel. He went to a second meeting. This one wasn't in Parliament. This one was inside a private estate just outside London, a place historically used when royals needed to speak quietly, discreetly, and with no official trace of attendance. And that's where things began to shift. Imagine the scene. A long driveway lined with ancient oaks. A gray morning fog hanging low over the grounds. Security cars scaled back, not more numerous, but fewer, quieter, subtler. The type of security that signals not danger, but discretion. Harry stepped out of the car wearing something rare for him since stepping back from royal duties. A formal dark coat, tailored, professional, unmistakably British. No California casual. No Hollywood glow. He wasn't arriving as private citizen Harry. He was arriving as someone about to negotiate. But negotiate what? Inside the estate waited a small group. 3 individuals whose names would not be officially confirmed, but who insiders later identified as senior palace legal advisors. Not public-facing. Not spokespeople. These were the people who handled the deeply sensitive, quietly explosive matters no one ever spoke about in interviews or documentaries. Harry didn't greet them casually. He didn't shake hands. He reportedly walked into the meeting room with a seriousness that suggested he already knew the stakes. For hours, they talked. And while the door stayed closed, a few details eventually leaked. The first, Harry was not passive. He wasn't there to be told what Parliament was planning. He wasn't there to accept whatever consequences were coming. He was there to push back. And that alone was remarkable, because for years, the narrative was that Harry had left the royal sphere entirely, that he didn't want the institution, its rules, or its influence. Yet here he was, facing the very advisors who represented the system he claimed to have rejected. Why? One word. Risk. Not for the public, not for the monarchy, but for himself. The petition demanded he be stripped of royal rights. But the truth was, Harry still held more of those rights than most realized. Removing them wasn't just symbolic. It had financial, diplomatic, and legal consequences he could not ignore. Things that went far beyond titles. Some insiders claimed the advisors told him the consequences could affect international privileges, diplomatic protections, trust structured around his birthright, even future inheritance matters. The public saw drama. Parliament saw accountability. But Harry? He saw consequences that could alter the course of his entire life. So he pushed back. According to one insider, Harry's tone was tense but controlled, a deliberate attempt to negotiate without appearing desperate. But the advisors were firm. Parliament wasn't moving. The petition was gaining momentum. And if the palace didn't respond appropriately, the monarchy itself could face a backlash. That was the second leak. The palace wasn't just worried about Harry. They were worried about themselves. Because this wasn't merely a petition about one prince. It was a test of whether the monarchy could still maintain authority in a digital age where public dissent moves faster than protocol. If they ignored the petition, they risked appearing powerless. If they acted, they risked turning a family conflict into a public spectacle. And Harry? He stood at the center of both. But then came the twist. A second source claimed that halfway through the meeting, a message arrived, an urgent one, from a senior parliamentary figure. The advisors read it. Their expressions reportedly shifted. Whatever was in that message changed the direction of the conversation instantly. Some believe it contained early results of a private parliamentary survey, one that showed overwhelming support for stripping Harry of rights. Others believe it contained a legal update confirming Parliament could take action without royal consent if the situation escalated. Whatever the truth was, one thing became clear. Harry realized the situation was more serious than he thought. And that's when he made a decision that surprised even the advisors. He requested another meeting. Not in Parliament, not in a palace estate, but somewhere else. Somewhere neither side had used before. This meeting was to take place at an undisclosed international organization's London office, a neutral ground, not tied to the monarchy or government. Why? Because Harry wanted control, and he wanted witnesses, legal ones. This wasn't about protecting reputation. It was about protecting rights. And that is where the story deepens. Because while Harry began preparing for that third meeting, news of his dawn visit to Parliament leaked to the press. Intentionally or accidentally, no one knows. But once it did, speculation exploded. Why is Harry secretly meeting politicians? Is he trying to negotiate his way out? Is Parliament pressuring him behind the scenes? Is the monarchy divided on what to do? Every outlet had a theory. Every commentator had an opinion. Every critic had a new angle. Harry's silence, which was once a strategy, had now become fuel. People began asking if Harry was confident in his choices, if he believed in his public statements, if he stood firmly on his independence. Why was he suddenly holding emergency meetings behind closed doors? And that question hit harder than anyone expected. Even supporters found it difficult to explain. Even critics felt vindicated. Even Parliament, surprisingly, became more confident in their position. Because Harry wasn't acting like a prince in control. He was acting like a man scrambling to stop something. And whether that was true or not, perception mattered. It always had. But there was one last part of the story, one final twist that set up the avalanche of events that would follow. During the final hour of the private estate meeting, Harry reportedly received a call. Not from the palace, not from Parliament, but from someone connected to a global media organization. And the message was simple. They had a story, a big one, a story that would paint his situation in a way he absolutely did not want. Something had leaked, and not just about the petition. Something deeper, something from inside the palace. What exactly was in that leak? No one knows yet. Not fully. Some say it involved private communications. Others say it involved financial information. A few even claim it involved internal disagreements within the monarchy over Harry's fate. But whatever it was, Harry's expression reportedly changed the moment he heard it. He ended the meeting immediately, walked out of the estate, and went straight into preparations for the neutral ground negotiation he insisted must happen next. A negotiation that would determine his next move, Parliament's next move, and the palace's next move. And it would lead directly into the events that shook the monarchy even more violently than the petition itself. Because what happened in that next meeting, no one expected, not even Harry. And what came out of it would send shockwaves through Parliament, the palace, and the entire nation. The moment the petition officially crossed Parliament's desk, the entire United Kingdom shifted. Not just the palace, not just the media, but ordinary citizens felt it. They could almost sense the tension pulsing through Westminster. The petition demanding that Prince Harry be stripped of his royal rights was no longer a whisper on the internet. It was a formal, official challenge to the monarchy, and the implications were immense. Inside the House of Commons, the first murmurs began quietly. Politicians gathered in small clusters, reviewing the petition and debating its significance. Some dismissed it as an exaggerated public outcry, a digital-age protest that would fade as quickly as it came. Others, however, saw the storm brewing and recognized its potential to reshape the monarchy entirely. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. For years, Parliament had largely avoided interfering in the internal affairs of the royal family. But this petition was different. It was backed by millions of signatures, by public outrage, and by relentless media coverage. Ignoring it was no longer an option. As discussions progressed, one startling revelation surfaced. Parliament had quietly begun reviewing precedent. What powers did they actually have? Could they legally strip a prince of his rights? Historical cases were referenced, old statutes dusted off, and legal interpretations argued. For many politicians, it was the first time they had fully grasped the weight of what the petition demanded. The monarchy had always operated in a sphere of soft power, tradition, and public loyalty, but now that sphere was being tested. Meanwhile, outside the halls of Parliament, the public reaction was immediate and explosive. Citizens flooded social media with opinions, videos, and petitions of their own. Television networks ran hour-long segments analyzing every detail of the situation, speculating on possible outcomes. Even international media outlets joined in, covering the unfolding drama as a historic constitutional moment. Every signature, every news article, and every tweet added pressure to a monarchy already balancing on a knife's edge. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere grew tense. Advisors began monitoring every parliament session, every debate, every news broadcast. Security teams were briefed on possible protests, and communication teams worked overtime to control the narrative. For the first time in modern history, the palace faced the prospect of public demand directly influencing royal privileges. The stakes were high, and the internal conversations became almost frantic. "This isn't just a petition," one senior aide reportedly said. "This is a referendum on Harry, and by extension, on us all." Harry, meanwhile, remained a central figure in all of this, though not directly in public view. His previous secret meetings were now beginning to influence events. Advisors on both sides, palace and parliament, understood that his actions, responses, and negotiations could tip the balance. Every choice he made had a ripple effect. Would he respond publicly? Would he continue to work behind closed doors? Or would he attempt to influence Parliament through intermediaries? The petition itself became a national talking point. Its supporters were passionate, framing the action as a matter of accountability. Harry's critics saw it as a long-overdue correction, a demonstration that privilege could no longer shield behavior from public scrutiny. Yet even some of Harry's supporters admitted the unprecedented nature of the situation. They warned that public pressure could escalate the situation beyond repair, potentially resulting in permanent damage to the monarchy's image. Parliament's formal response was a turning point. Initially cautious, the leadership eventually issued a statement acknowledging receipt of the petition and promising to review the concerns raised, ensuring the integrity of the monarchy and public trust are maintained. The statement seemed neutral, but it carried a weight no one could ignore. By formally recognizing the petition, Parliament signaled that Harry's actions and the public reaction were matters of national significance. Legal experts began weighing in publicly. They debated the extent to which Parliament could intervene, the historical precedents for stripping royal rights, and the potential consequences of either action or inaction. The conversation was complex, nuanced, and, at times, deeply speculative. Some analysts predicted a prolonged political and legal battle, suggesting that the outcome could take months or even years to fully resolve. Others argued that public opinion alone would exert enough pressure to force Harry to negotiate or compromise. Meanwhile, back at Buckingham Palace, the royal family watched closely. The petition was not just a matter of public opinion. It was a reflection of growing dissatisfaction, a signal that traditional mechanisms of control were being challenged. Private conversations reportedly became heated, with some family members urging a swift resolution, while others advocated patience and careful legal maneuvering. Every advisor, every aide, and every lawyer understood that the situation could not be treated lightly. One wrong step could turn a public relations challenge into a constitutional crisis. The media played a critical role in shaping public perception. Headlines alternated between condemnation and defense, creating a charged atmosphere that left little room for nuance. Social media campaigns intensified, sometimes amplifying false rumors, other times highlighting leaked information from unnamed sources. The result was a perfect storm of speculation, emotion, and anticipation. Citizens were drawn into the drama, not as passive observers, but as active participants, their opinions influencing every decision made in Westminster and Buckingham Palace alike. And yet, amidst all this chaos, Harry's strategy remained deliberate. He continued to engage behind closed doors, seeking legal counsel, gathering support, and preparing for potential negotiations. According to some insiders, he was acutely aware that public perception mattered as much as legal authority. He needed to navigate both spheres carefully. One misstep could irreparably damage his reputation, or worse, accelerate the very process that Parliament had set in motion. As the weeks progressed, tension escalated further. Parliament's committees scheduled hearings, inviting experts, former officials, and legal scholars to discuss the petition's implications. Each session revealed new complexities, from constitutional questions to financial considerations. Questions about inheritance, ceremonial roles, and the limits of royal privilege became central topics of debate. What seemed like a straightforward petition transformed into a multifaceted national discussion about monarchy, power, and accountability. At the same time, leaks from inside the palace began to surface. Some were intentional, aimed at shaping public opinion. Others were accidental, revealing the depth of internal disagreement. Advisors disagreed on strategy, family members were divided in their responses, and the very notion of tradition clashed with modern scrutiny. For Harry, each leak was a double-edged sword. It could bolster his position if the narrative aligned with his goals, or it could undermine him if public sentiment turned further against him. The tension reached a fever pitch when Parliament officially scheduled a committee vote to decide whether to recommend action. This vote was unprecedented. Never before had such a formal review been undertaken regarding the rights of a living royal family member. Politicians understood that their decision would not only impact Harry, but also set a precedent for the monarchy as a whole. Every speech, every amendment, and every public statement became part of a high-stakes performance watched by millions. Even as Parliament deliberated, Harry's advisors worked tirelessly to prepare him for the next phase. Legal teams reviewed every possible scenario. Communication specialists developed strategies to manage public reaction. Political operatives coordinated discreet conversations with sympathetic parliamentarians. Harry himself reportedly spent hours analyzing the potential outcomes, weighing every possible risk and reward. The stakes were clear. One misstep could permanently alter his relationship with the monarchy, his public image, and his legal privileges. And yet, despite all the preparation, the public remained captivated. Every news cycle brought a new revelation, a new rumor, or a new leak. Every citizen had an opinion. Every journalist had a theory. The story had become larger than Harry himself. It was now a reflection of the relationship between monarchy, Parliament, and the people. For many, it was a defining moment in British history, a rare intersection of public will and royal privilege that had never been seen on such a scale. The climax of Chapter 3 arrives with the revelation that the committee's vote was not unanimous. Early reports indicated that while a majority supported recommending action against Harry, there were dissenting voices within Parliament. Some expressed concern over potential backlash. Others questioned the legal authority of stripping a royal of rights without broader constitutional reform. The result was a tense, unresolved situation that left the nation on edge and set the stage for the next chapter in an already explosive story. And as the committee prepared to release its official recommendation, whispers of another unexpected development surfaced. Anonymous sources hinted that Harry had already begun negotiating with sympathetic figures within Parliament, laying the groundwork for a counter-strategy that could alter the outcome entirely. The story was far from over, and the tension, already sky-high, promised even more drama in the chapters to come. But just as the nation braced for the committee's official statement, one question hung in the air. Would Parliament act decisively, or would Harry's secret strategy succeed in reshaping the course of events? The petition had crossed Parliament. The votes were being counted. The nation held its breath. And inside Buckingham Palace, something far more volatile was brewing. For decades, the royal family had operated behind a veil of secrecy. The public saw official appearances, photographs, and carefully curated statements. But what happened behind closed doors, what family members whispered in private chambers, what advisors debated in hushed tones, was rarely, if ever, revealed. Until now. Because this petition, unprecedented in its scale and public support, forced the palace to confront a truth it could no longer ignore. Prince Harry's actions were no longer just a family matter. They were a national crisis. And the family's response would set the tone for how the monarchy weathered one of its most significant storms in modern history. It began in the morning. Queen Elizabeth's senior aides called an emergency meeting. Legal advisors, communications directors, and long-standing palace counselors gathered in a room that had seen centuries of historic decisions. Their task, to assess the petition, analyze its implications, and formulate a response that would protect both the monarchy and the public perception of royal authority. But it wasn't easy. The discussions were heated from the start. Some advisors argued for a strict approach, recommending that Harry's privileges be immediately curtailed to demonstrate that tradition and accountability remained paramount. Others cautioned restraint, warning that taking dramatic action against a royal family member could backfire, sparking media frenzy and public sympathy for Harry. As the debate raged on, tensions within the family itself became clear. Reports later leaked, suggesting that certain family members were furious with Harry. They saw his continued independence, his public statements, and now the petition as personal betrayals. At the same time, other family members reportedly urged a more cautious approach, arguing that public perception of fairness and compassion was equally important. This division, insiders later claimed, mirrored larger fractures within the palace, between old-guard traditionalists and those more attuned to modern media scrutiny. Harry himself was aware of the tension. Sources indicated that he had been quietly monitoring the situation from his residence abroad. Despite the distance, he knew every leak, every media analysis, every political rumor, and he understood the significance of the family's private debates. Every whispered conversation could influence public perception. Every recommendation from the advisors could tip the balance toward action or disaster. One key figure reportedly emerged during these closed-door discussions. The Queen's private secretary. Known for navigating palace crises with discretion and precision, the secretary allegedly became the central point of contact, coordinating between the family, legal teams, and communications staff. Sources suggest the secretary's advice was blunt and direct. This is no longer just about Harry. This is about the institution itself. Any decision we make will define the monarchy for years to come. But there were more than just strategic considerations. Emotional undercurrents ran deep. Privately, family members expressed anger, disappointment, and even fear. Harry, they reportedly said, had undermined the family's credibility, and now the public, emboldened by the petition, demanded answers. Meetings reportedly featured sharp exchanges, with advisors trying to mediate, calm nerves, and redirect attention toward practical solutions. The tension was palpable, even behind closed doors. And yet, even as the palace deliberated, another factor complicated matters: leaks. While the family sought discretion, information continued to surface in media outlets. Some leaks seemed deliberate, possibly to gauge public reaction or influence strategy. Others were accidental, emerging from aides or journalists with inside connections. The effect was dramatic. Public speculation intensified, trust within the family was tested, and the urgency of decisions grew exponentially. One incident reportedly escalated the tension further. An internal memo circulated, summarizing Harry's potential legal strategies and political influence. Some advisors wanted it destroyed immediately, others insisted it be reviewed carefully. According to insiders, the document revealed that Harry was preparing to negotiate with sympathetic figures within Parliament, potentially shaping the outcome of the petition in his favor. This revelation reportedly caused sharp arguments within the palace. Some saw it as a threat to the monarchy's authority. Others recognized it as a reality they could not ignore. Even the queen herself, long accustomed to controlling public perception, was reportedly affected. Sources later claimed she expressed deep concern about how the public viewed the monarchy. She understood that a decisive or poorly timed action could ignite outrage, while inaction could suggest weakness. Reports indicate that she personally intervened in several internal debates, urging advisors to carefully balance legal, political, and emotional considerations. Her influence reportedly helped prevent immediate escalation, but it did not resolve the underlying tension. Meanwhile, Harry's perceived strategy added fuel to the fire. By quietly negotiating with key figures outside the palace and closely monitoring public opinion, he positioned himself not only as a central figure in the controversy, but also as someone with leverage. This reportedly frustrated palace staff, who felt that internal deliberations might be undermined by Harry's external actions. Advisors debated whether to confront him directly or to let the process unfold, weighing the risks of public conflict versus private negotiation. The leaks continued. One alleged source claimed that private conversations between family members, intended to remain confidential, were partially shared with journalists. These leaks suggested both internal division and rising frustration with Harry's decisions. The effect on public perception was immediate. Debates erupted about loyalty, privilege, and accountability, framing the royal family's private deliberations as a national spectacle. The palace, for its part, reportedly intensified security measures and monitored all communications, recognizing that controlling information was critical to maintaining authority. As the days progressed, the palace reportedly shifted its focus. Rather than attempting to directly influence public opinion, advisors began preparing for potential legal and parliamentary outcomes. Contingency plans were drawn up. Scenarios were mapped out for every possible vote, leak, or negotiation. Sources suggest that this was unprecedented in modern royal history, a full-scale internal operation designed to anticipate and manage both political and public consequences. And yet, the human element could not be ignored. Private conversations reportedly revealed emotional strains that legal documents could not address. Anger, disappointment, fear, and even guilt were reportedly expressed by multiple family members. One insider claimed that advisors spent hours mediating, ensuring that the emotional stakes did not override strategic decisions. Another suggested that Harry's absence made matters more complex, as the family could not fully gauge his intentions, motivations, or readiness to compromise. The tension reached its peak when a confidential meeting reportedly ended in an impasse. Some advisors recommended immediate action against Harry, citing legal authority and public demand. Others cautioned that hasty decisions could result in backlash, further leaks, and long-term reputational damage. Family members, reportedly exhausted by days of debate, were divided. The Queen, according to sources, urged calm, patience, and careful review of every possible outcome. Her intervention reportedly prevented a dramatic confrontation, but did not resolve the uncertainty. As the palace continued its deliberations, an unexpected development reportedly arrived from outside. A senior political figure, familiar with both the petition and the family dynamics, contacted the palace discreetly. Their message, brief but urgent, suggested that Parliament was moving faster than anticipated and that public support for action against Harry was increasing. Sources indicate that this external pressure added a new layer of urgency, forcing the palace to accelerate its internal decision-making processes. Despite all the tension, reports suggest that the family remained cautious. Advisors emphasized the importance of measured communication, avoiding missteps, and balancing public perception with legal authority. The goal was clear: maintain control of the narrative while navigating unprecedented public scrutiny and political pressure. Every statement, every decision, and every internal conversation carried weight that could influence the monarchy for years to come. By the end of the week, the palace reportedly reached a tentative consensus. Respond to Parliament's consideration of the petition, monitor Harry's external negotiations closely, and prepare for multiple contingencies depending on the vote. It was a delicate balance, an attempt to protect both the institution and the family member at the center of the storm. But even with careful planning, the internal divisions, leaks, and public pressure ensured that the situation remained unstable. And then came the final twist. Insiders later revealed that Harry himself had sent an unexpected message to the palace, signaling his willingness to negotiate under specific conditions. The content of the message reportedly shocked advisors, suggesting that Harry was not only aware of the internal debate, but actively seeking to influence the outcome. This development reportedly forced the family to reconsider strategies, reevaluate contingencies, and anticipate potential surprises. The stage was set. The petition was moving through Parliament. Public attention was at a fever pitch, and the royal family, behind closed doors, was grappling with a crisis that combined legal, political, and emotional complexities in a way they had never faced before. The question now was simple, but impossible to answer. How would the monarchy respond? And more importantly, how would Harry react to their response? Because whatever happened next would not just determine his rights, his privileges, or his public standing. It would reshape the very relationship between the monarchy and the people. The air in Westminster was electric. For weeks, Parliament had watched the petition demanding that Prince Harry be stripped of his royal rights gather momentum. The nation's attention was fixed on every session, every statement, every leak. And now, after careful review, consultation with legal experts, and intense internal debate, Parliament was finally ready to act. It started quietly, at least for those outside the inner circles. Behind closed doors, committees met in long, high-ceilinged rooms, their discussions dense with legal jargon, historical precedent, and strategic considerations. Every angle was being dissected. Questions were raised about constitutional authority, the limits of royal privilege, and the potential consequences of a decision that could redefine the monarchy's role in modern Britain. Every word mattered. Every pause was significant. At first, public perception remained uncertain. News outlets speculated endlessly, some framing the situation as a minor procedural review, others as the beginning of a historic showdown between Parliament and the royal family. Social media campaigns intensified, with hashtags trending across platforms, petitions circulating, and ordinary citizens expressing both outrage and support. The volume of public input was unprecedented, placing extraordinary pressure on members of Parliament. Then came the announcement. Parliament released an official statement confirming that it had received the petition, had reviewed the legal and historical context, and would now move forward with formal recommendations. The statement was carefully worded, emphasizing neutrality and respect for the monarchy, but it carried a clear message. The issue was being taken seriously, and action was imminent. What made the moment truly groundbreaking was what followed. Parliament scheduled a formal committee hearing to discuss the potential removal of Harry's royal rights. This hearing, insiders later revealed, was unlike any other in modern history. Witnesses would include legal scholars, former royal aides, constitutional experts, and even select members of the public who had signed the petition. Every argument, every precedent, every counterpoint would be scrutinized under the public eye. The stage was set for a historic confrontation. As news of the hearing spread, Harry's advisors reportedly mobilized quickly. They reached out to legal experts, former diplomats, and sympathetic figures within Parliament to prepare defenses, craft arguments, and anticipate objections. According to insiders, Harry himself was closely monitoring developments, analyzing both public sentiment and political maneuvering. His goal was clear: to protect his rights while navigating an institution that had long dictated the rules of engagement. The first hearing session was tense from the start. Committee members reviewed historical cases involving royal authority, legal interpretations of succession rights, and the potential implications of stripping a royal of privileges. Witnesses presented evidence, some emphasizing legal precedent, others highlighting public opinion. Every claim was contested, every interpretation debated. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of history, politics, and drama that captivated the nation. Even before the hearings concluded, public opinion began to crystallize. News outlets provided live coverage, analysts offered commentary, and social media exploded with debates. Citizens were no longer passive observers. They were active participants, influencing discourse, shaping narrative and amplifying pressure on Parliament to act decisively. Every public statement mattered. Every leak, every nuance could tip the balance. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, advisors watched with equal intensity. They monitored coverage, tracked public sentiment, and provided Harry with updates. Sources suggest that the palace understood the delicate balance required. While intervention could influence the outcome, overreach risked further damaging public perception. Each move had to be calculated, precise, and strategically timed. Tensions escalated further when committee members began to question the monarchy's role in modern society. Some argued that the institution relied on public trust and therefore could not tolerate behavior perceived as inconsistent with its principles. Others cautioned that removing royal rights could set a dangerous precedent, destabilizing centuries of tradition. Heated exchanges reportedly took place, both on record and behind closed doors, reflecting the high stakes and complexity of the decision. One particularly dramatic moment reportedly occurred when a senior legal expert presented an argument comparing Harry's situation to historical cases in which royals had faced restrictions or removals. While some comparisons were academic, others were striking in their implications, suggesting that Parliament had both the authority and the precedent to act. Committee members reportedly reacted with visible surprise, debating implications for both the present and future. As hearings continued, Harry's strategy became increasingly clear. Reports indicate that he was not merely defending himself legally. He was actively seeking to influence sympathetic parliamentarians, subtly shaping interpretations of precedent and highlighting inconsistencies in the committee's assumptions. His advisors reportedly coordinated private briefings, crafted position papers, and ensured that he remained a central figure in the debate without appearing domineering or confrontational. Meanwhile, the public's reaction continued to intensify. Every news segment, opinion column, and social media post amplified the sense of urgency. Citizens debated loyalty, accountability, and the evolving role of monarchy in a modern democracy. Supporters of the petition framed the hearings as a victory for public influence, while Harry's defenders emphasized fairness, due process, and tradition. The nation seemed split down the middle, with every conversation reflecting the tension playing out inside Westminster. And then came the first vote. While procedural and non-binding, it was significant. Parliament's committee approved a recommendation to formally consider removing Harry's royal rights. The vote itself was a symbolic yet powerful gesture, signaling that action was not only possible but probable. Public reaction was immediate. Headlines splashed across newspapers and websites. Commentators debated the implications endlessly, and social media erupted with commentary, memes, and campaigns. Inside the palace, advisors reportedly reacted with alarm. The symbolic vote, while technically preliminary, carried enormous psychological weight. It suggested that Parliament was serious, that public opinion mattered, and that the issue could escalate rapidly. Reports indicate that the family convened emergency discussions, weighing potential responses and preparing for multiple contingencies. Every option was considered, from formal statements to private negotiations, reflecting the unprecedented nature of the crisis. Harry, according to insiders, responded strategically. He reportedly monitored the committee vote closely, assessed the political climate, and adjusted his approach in real time. Sources indicate that he was aware of the delicate balance between public perception, legal authority, and family dynamics. His strategy was careful, deliberate, and adaptive, an effort to protect his interests while navigating a volatile political landscape. The tension escalated further when rumors began circulating about potential leaks from the committee hearings. Some alleged that confidential discussions were being shared with sympathetic media outlets, amplifying public scrutiny and complicating decision-making. The effect was immediate. Speculation intensified, pressure on Parliament increased, and the palace grew even more cautious. The story was no longer just about Harry. It was about institutional authority, public trust, and the delicate balance between tradition and modern accountability. As the chapter progressed, one key revelation emerged. Certain committee members reportedly expressed concern about the long-term precedent of removing royal rights. While supportive of the petition, they feared that immediate action could destabilize the monarchy or alienate key constituencies. These internal debates highlighted the complexity of the issue, demonstrating that even within Parliament, opinions were divided, strategy was debated, and outcomes were uncertain. And yet, the momentum was clear. Parliament had taken its first bold move, signaling that the petition could no longer be ignored, that legal and political action was a genuine possibility, and that Harry's position was under unprecedented scrutiny. The combination of public pressure, political authority, and media attention created a situation that would only intensify in the coming weeks. By the end of this phase,